Welcome to the Coastside Fire Protection District Board of Directors regular board meeting, March 23rd, 2022. Roll call, please, Jean.
Yes, good evening. Director Cockrell?
Here.
Director McKimmey?
Here.
Director Sherrill?
Here.
Director Stockman?
Here.
President Burke?
Yes, please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it
stands
one
one
nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
for all. Thank you. What I'd like to do is to make it easier for Jean, I will tonight make the motions, and who would like to make a second? Steve, would you be kind enough to make seconds?
I will.
Thank you.
And I'm going to recuse myself from the consent calendar, right, Jane?
Yes, correct.
I think that's what I'm going to do every time.
Okay. Then I move approval of the consent calendar with the notion that Director McKimmey has recused himself on this vote. Do we have a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell?
Yes.
Director McKimmey? Recused?
Recuse.
Director Sherrill?
Present.
Director Stockman?
Yes.
President Burke?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0, one recusal.
Moving on to continuous business. Did I skip over one? Do we have any public comment at this point?
We have
Anything
no
that's-
public on, President.
Then moving on to item 6, continuous business, redistricting the district. And I understand Redistricting Partners is going to kick off this section of the agenda. Joe, the floor is yours.
Great. Good to see everyone again. We have a short presentation for you all on the districting kind of process, but also just the map that we came up with in our last task force meeting. Mostly though, I'm going to turn this over to you all to discuss and move forward on this afterwards. But with that, I'm happy to share my screen really quick. So just the things that we'll cover, just the traditional redistricting principles. We've gone over this several times before, but we'd just like to mention it before we present any draft maps. We'll also talk about the Fair Maps Act, and then we will go over the draft maps with some of the overlays that we were working on. So just traditional redistricting principles. Remember that we're trying to keep the districts relatively equal size. They need to be within a 10% deviation. So the biggest district can't be 10% bigger than the smallest district. The districts must follow the Voting Rights Act, both the federal and the state Voting Rights Act. They need to be contiguous, so all parts of the district need to be touching somehow. And then the districts need to be as compact as possible with both appearance and function. They need to maintain communities of interest, and we took a look at neighborhoods when we were drawing these maps, and we try to maintain those as much as possible. And then we follow city, county, and local government lines. There's no official neighborhood boundaries, but again, we were using the map that was at the fire station and kind of use those as our local lines to help guide us when we're making these decisions. Just overall with communities of interest, these are groups of like-minded people. There are some protected groups that are covered under the Voting Rights Act. Those are Latinos, Asians, and African Americans. While race is a community of interest, it can't be used as the predominant factor for drawing districts outside of the federal Voting Rights Act. And then just to cover the Fair Maps Act, that's partially why we're doing this open process, but basically it was a law to help dictate how public meetings over redistricting should happen, and also lay out some additional ground rules. One is that we can't use incumbents or potential candidates as a community of interest when considering these lines, and then we can't draw districts to advantage or disadvantage any particular political party. So these rules don't these rules mostly apply to state and county jurisdictions. However, many local jurisdictions and many special districts like the Coastside Fire District tend to just opt into these just to be in compliant with state law. And then we've taken community of input throughout the last few months, and we've incorporated them as we're drawing these maps. One thing that we did was there was a task force established where two of the directors joined me in Half Moon Bay at the fire station. We all sat down and we had a meeting both that was broadcast on Zoom, but also open for anyone to come by and give us additional community input. From there, we worked on a lot of the draft maps that we had presented before and built off them and narrowed down our options really to the draft map that I'm going to present to you today. So just an overview though, this is the Coastside Fire District. These are the boundaries. And then this is just an overview of the population data. We have about 24,000 people. So if you divide it by 5, it's about 4,500-ish that we're trying to shoot for. I can give you an exact number. I just don't know it off the top of my head, but that was around the number we were trying to shoot for each district. And again, what we did was I sat down with the task force. We went through each draft maps. We actually amended each of the draft maps I presented. So draft map A, draft map B, and draft map C. We took a close look at each of them. We kind of modified it. We overlaid it with the neighborhood boundaries that were available to us. And then from there, we kind of narrowed down our options. And when I say we, I mean the directors narrowed down their options, decided to go with modifications to draft map A. And then I'm going to present to you what is called draft map A version 3. This is the map that the task force decided to bring forward to the full board. Each of these districts is within the 10% deviation, so they're relatively equal size. And then we provided a packet of materials both to you and the public that details each district in this map. So I bring you draft map A version 3, and a few of the characteristics of it is that we kept Montara whole in the northern district, and then we connected it to Clipper Ridge because we needed additional population. There wasn't enough people in just Montara to have a full district, and so we were able to connect it down the one to Clipper Ridge. We used Highway 1 as the main dividing point for our districts kind of in the northern part. So there's an eastern district and a western district. Highway 1 was what we decided to use as kind of a natural boundary to divide those districts. We kept El Granada as whole as possible. El Granada is a big population center. We played around with a few maps that kept the area whole, that didn't make any splits to El Granada. However, there were trade-offs with that with other surrounding neighborhoods. And so with this map though, we kept El Granada neighborhood as whole as possible. We did split a couple of blocks off it, but again, the split is very minimal in this one. And then we kept neighborhoods in Half Moon Bay together and as whole as possible. In a couple of the prior draft maps, Half Moon Bay was split in some ways. So just to give you a broad overview of it, this is what the map looks like. Again, Montara is kept whole up here. It goes down this street and then connects it with Clipper Ridge, and then a little bit of El Granada, those kind of blocks that we had to take away from C to balance out the population. It does have that western district. In this one, it's B. And then we have our Half Moon Bay district, our El Granada mostly district. It has some parts of Miramar in it, but most of the population is in El Granada. And then our kind of southern district, which has it's mostly populated by Ocean Colony and some of the surrounding areas around there, but it does cut into Half Moon Bay just a little bit, and then has much of the hillside in the southern part of the fire district. When we look at the population numbers, we are right at 9.9 deviation. So we're within the 10%. So good job. Again, most of that 9.9 though is because we're keeping El Granada as whole as possible and really trying to minimize the split. So again, the biggest district is that El Granada district, District C at 5.8%. And then the least populated one is Half Moon Bay, the Half Moon Bay district, District D. But again, we are at 9.9%. We're within the 10% deviation range. This is just an overlay with the neighborhoods. In the packet, you can actually go district by district. It has the labels on it. When I put the labels on this, it gets a little bit messy. But you can see here, El Granada is a little bit split. in this area, but we've been able to keep every other neighborhood whole. This is part of Moss Beach right here, but it's not very populated. There's just a road that goes down
So
from
Joe,
here to Highway 1. Yeah.
so when you say neighborhoods, you're talking census tract or not?
So I took the map that was on your wall in the fire station, and then I recreated it in our program within
Okay.
census blocks. So
Okay,
it's kind of merging the census blocks with the neighborhood map that you all have.
okay, but so I got that, but I just wanted to make sure the public knew that we were also dealing with the census tract given to us by the government. So we had to deal with that and keep within those realms as well. So I
Yes.
just want people to know that as well when we were dividing this all up. That's something else we had to deal with.
That's correct. And a lot of the census blocks don't perfectly overlay with the fire district. They don't perfectly overlay with neighborhoods that many people might think of. Basically, the census doesn't provide us with exact addresses for everybody because that would violate privacy concern issues. And so what they do is they carve out geographies and they tell us, within this area, 10 or 15 or how many people live within that area. And we have to work with that in order to construct our maps.
Right on, thank you.
Awesome. So again, these were the neighborhoods that we were working on. And what's next is I turn it over to you all to discuss these issues. You can provide additional feedback if you'd like. You can make motions if you'd like to move forward. We can also take more input from the public if you so desire to. One thing I do want to mention though too is if you were to approve a map today or at some point in the future, we would then have to talk about sequencing as well. And just a quick overview of what we mean by sequencing and numbering. Basically, you all will determine the numbers for each of these districts. So you will assign a number to each of these districts. That's your decision. And then you'll have to tell us which number district is up in which election year. So that decision though is up to you all. There's different options that you can choose. You can choose odds and evens, or odds are up in 2022, evens are up in 24. You can do 1 through 3 are up in a certain year, and 4 through 5 are up. There's various options that you could choose, but again, that is a decision that you will all have to make on when we're moving forward to this, on what are the numbers of each particular district and what years they're up for election. So with that, I'm happy to take questions or happy to go
Joe,
back.
why don't you stay on just for a few moments? We cover a couple of other things, but please stay tuned. We may have some questions. I would like to, on the subject of redistricting, read the ordinance that we're discussing here that we'll be discussing further in the meeting. This is ordinance number 2022-01. The ordinance reads, ordinance of the Coastside Fire Protection District providing for election of members of the fire board by district, establishing the boundaries and identification number of each district, and establishing the election order of each district. Secret determination exempt pursuant to state secret guidelines, sections 15378, 15601, parentheses B, parentheses 3. That is the ordinance that we're discussing. And I would like to make a motion to waive the reading of the rest of the detailed ordinance. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmey,
Yes,
Director Sherrill,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion
Thank you.
passes 5-0.
Thank you. I'd like to open a public hearing with any members of the public who would like to speak on this ordinance or ask any questions. Any member of the public, please. Hearing none, I will close the public meeting and move on. At this point, we have a proposed ordinance, and I believe, Jean, that what we're going to do is take a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance and move the second meeting to a April 13th special meeting.
Yes, there's a little hoop to jump through here in order to comply with the terms of the settlement agreement that you entered into after receiving the demand letter. And based on the delay in receiving the census data, we will not be able to make the county's deadline by doing your second reading at your next regular meeting. And in order to do a second reading on an ordinance, you must do that at a regular meeting. So you'll need to hold a special meeting, adopt an urgency ordinance, which will look just like this one, which will stay in place until you do the second reading at your regular meeting in April. I know that sounds like a lot of legal gobbledygook, but that's the way we're going to have to approach this. And tonight, when you're introducing the ordinance, you will also need to address what the consultant just told you, which is how you want to number these districts and how this for the sequencing of the election. And it's my understanding, and Jonathan, please correct me if I'm wrong, that in the November 22 election, 3 director seats are up. So 3 would transition in that election to the by district, and then the 2 additional seats would transition in 2024.
Yes, that is my understanding as well, to do that. Before I move to the next step on this, let's pause for a moment to see whether there are any other board comments, discussion, or anything you'd like to add, questions of Joe or Jeannie. Any other item? Bruce?
I would just like to say that during this process, Cynthia was a wealth of knowledge. Cynthia, thank you so much for all you brought to the table. And I don't know if it was from your CERT work that you had so much intricate knowledge of the neighborhoods and the Coastside, and it was just amazing. It was a great asset to have, and I sure appreciate you being there with me.
Thank you, Bruce. It was a pleasure to be of service.
Well done. Well done with that. Any other questions or comments at all? And then what I would like to do is I believe is that I would make a motion that we approve at this time version AV3 and move that the second reading of this ordinance would be held on April 13th, 2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
There will just be, there's just one change to that motion, Mr. President, and that would be the second reading will be at your regular meeting in April, which is, I believe, April 26th or 7th. It will be at your regular meeting.
All right, and I accept that amendment. And we have a second on that. Any further
Yes, second.
discussion? Any further discussions?
I have a question. Is not the first reading of this evening?
Yes.
Then the
Yes.
second meeting would be at the special meeting on April the 13th.
No, at the special meeting, that's the special meeting we need to hold in order to do an urgency ordinance, because you cannot adopt and do a second reading at a special meeting. And that's why we need to do the special meeting, adopt an urgency ordinance to keep on track. And then you will do your second reading of this at your regular meeting in April.
Well, did I read something wrong here? I thought we had to have this wrapped up by April the 17th.
Yes, and you will, because we'll be holding that special meeting on the 13th, and you'll be adopting what's called an urgency ordinance at
Okay.
that meeting, which will
Thank you.
stay in effect only until you do your second reading on this ordinance, the
Thanks for
permanent
explaining
ordinance.
it. Thank you very much.
Okay. So let's see. Did we vote on that motion? I believe that the motion is to.
No, you have not voted yet. I will
All
call,
right,
I'll call the roll at
then
this point
please
unless there's any
We
further
have a-
discussion.
We have a motion and a second. Please, as amended, the motion, please have the roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes,
Director Sherrill,
Yes,
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
we're moving on the subject. And then, as I understand it, the staff will will publish a summary of the ordinance provided, and then prior to the proposed adoption in April.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
Terrific. All right. Moving on to new business. Review and discuss and adopt a resolution finding the meeting of the Board of Directors via teleconferencing protect against the ongoing and imminent health and safety risks posed by COVID-19. I believe this will be Jean's. Any?
Yes, this is what you are asked to do at each meeting in order to allow you to continue to have hybrid meetings. As I've told you at least once in the past, I believe there is a bill pending in the legislature which would allow for permanent conducting of hybrid meetings, but that bill has not been passed yet. So in the meantime, if you wish to continue doing hybrid meetings, then we would ask that you adopt this resolution. Thank you.
I move the adoption of resolution number 2022-06. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Bruce? You're mute, Bruce.
I'm surprised we're doing this meeting via Zoom. When we met for the redistricting, you know, we were in person. I feel comfortable. I think it's time to get back to normal. This is my opinion.
Well, can we just set a date? We're going to have a busy April, but could we make plans to have a hybrid meeting in May? If that is still a legal option and we can do that in both cases, would you please plan on seeing if we can do that in May? And then hopefully, if you agree, we could meet together, or the public can go in by Zoom, whatever is convenient. Is that acceptable? All right.
Yes.
May we will see each other in person, hopefully. Very good. We have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmey,
Yes.
Director Sherrill,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to item B, new business review, discuss and approve updated mobile equipment replacement plan. Chief Cox.
Thank you, President Burke. You'll see in front of you the staff report and the proposed replacement plan. As we've been discussing throughout the last 6 months, every time we go back for new apparatus, we're getting further and further out on our estimated delivery times. So we do have 2 1 fire engines for delivery in July of this year. Those should be in service toward the fall. The previous replacement plan had us purchasing the 3rd replacement engine in about 2.5 years from now. Our recommendation is, with the 20 to 27 month turnaround time on apparatus at the moment, that we actually place that order after July 1, so next fiscal year, so that we can get it in anticipation. Just to give you a point of reference, South San Francisco ordered a new ambulance the end of last year, so December of 2021. They got a spring of 2023 estimated delivery date for that new. So the whole system is under a lot of pressure at the moment. The other reason for that is we're seeing price rises anywhere between 5 to 10% every year over year on all this apparatus. So if we do lock it in the new fiscal year, we will get the pricing that year instead. Apart from that, we also just include anticipated replacement of some staff vehicles, utilities, and looking out, projecting basically to 20. After 2 years, we'll be in shape this district's ever been in when it comes to fire apparatus, both front and replacement.
I'm sorry,
Thank
did you repeat that last sentence? I just didn't hear it.
Yeah, so after we get this next round done, so the replacement for the Type 6 and the next Type 1, we will be in the best kind of apparatus shape we've ever been in here, both on frontline and reserving.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And just to, for the public's sake, note that there is a very detailed vehicle replacement schedule that's available to anybody who would like to peruse it and follow as we change and update our equipment. But that's That's a good report. I make a motion to approve the updated mobile equipment replacement plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes,
Director Sherrill,
Yes,
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
I had a quick question for Chief Cox or Chief Armstrong. And that relates to what I saw in some document somewhere where engine 58 was being pushed into the engine house. I believe it was a new engine that they had just gotten. And this is a county engine, is my understanding. Now, that particular engine had a bell on it. Will our two engines have bells on them?
I believe so. I will have to check. I believe it's a part of the standard spec now for both the county and the coast is the bell.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, moving on. Item C in the new business, formation of a new community facilities district, number 36, Harbor Village RV Park, 100 Capistrano Road, Half Moon Bay. I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-07, a resolution of intent to form community facility district number 36. Do I have a second?
Second.
Chief Cox, did you have any comments on this?
No, just for
Very
general knowledge, the community facilities districts are a way for us to ensure that we legally have revenue to provide the services of the district on a new development beyond a certain amount.
Informing who gets formed in a community facility district and the costs and so forth is pretty well established by ordinances, so there's no details to go into it. This is just us approving the formation of it. I believe I made the motion. Any further discussion?
I have one comment, just on that process. There's been a couple occasions where people have asked me, you know, what does that mean? And just the explanation that Chief Cox gave there of this is a process, this is normal, this is part of our business. I wonder if sometimes, because I always sit down when I read the review and read those statements, whether they're from our agency or another, they often lack that common sense description to the public. And I wonder if that would be helpful sometimes. And maybe not everybody reads those, but I think a brief description sometimes in that redistricting is because the questions people have, does this mean my fire taxes are going to go up? Are my property taxes going to be raised? So I don't think other agencies do that either, but I think it's wise, especially in a small community, to add that just explanation of what that really means. Possibly not necessary, but I think helpful.
Steve, that's a good point. And maybe a suggestion, Chief Cox, is that when we annually approve the CFDs, perhaps an additional explanation along the lines that Steve was mentioning might be helpful at that time.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Even on future CFDs that come out, just you know, some boilerplate, common sense language about what it actually is.
Thank you.
This is done under Melrose, right?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Just maybe to point out, I just was having to pull up something here. There's a very simple and short description of exactly what that is. It's just relatively few words. It might be nice to put that on along with it, and that would help what Steve is talking about, and I have to agree.
Very good. With that, roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes,
Director Sherrill,
yes,
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item D in the new business, review, discuss, and approve an agreement for professional services with Hushwell and Company LLP for auditor services. Chief Cox.
Thank you, President Burke. This is an agreement for continuing with services with Harshwell and Company. They've been our auditing service for the last few years. If you remember, last year we went out for bid on services They were awarded, and we're looking to do a 3-year contract with the potential for a 2-year extension.
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-08, resolution of the Board of Directors, the Coastside Fire District approving agreement for professional services, Harlow Company LLP. Do I have a second?
Seconding.
Discussion. As far as I know, Chief, they've done a fine job. No problems at all that I'm aware of.
Very easy. to work.
Any other comments or questions?
As long as they keep giving us unqualified results, yeah, let's go with it.
Mhm.
Okay. Roll call, please, Jane.
Director Cockrell,
Yes,
Director McKimmy. You're muted.
Yes,
Thank you. Director Cheryl,
Yes,
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving
I
on
have
to,
one question, Gary,
Yes.
to Chief Cox. On these examples where we're choosing a professional services, a specific one, I'm curious to know, do you use the same companies on the San Mateo side? Is that, or they have two different needs, so they're two different products? How does that work?
Yeah, so on the county side, actually just a department within the county. So we actually have a lot less government.
Right.
They take care of all of that. We're just a department.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item E under new business, consider the approval of resolution declaring seasonal weeds a public nuisance. Fox.
This is the annual declaration, which is what gives us the authority under ordinance actually implement our weed abatement program. So by adopting this resolution, you are essentially declaring weeds a seasonal nuisance.
I move adoption of resolution number 2022-09, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Coastside Fire Protection District declaring seasonal weeds a public nuisance. Do I have a second?
Seconding.
Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
yes,
Director McKimmy,
yes,
Director Cheryl,
yes,
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item under new business, item F, weed abatement authorization to advertise for weed abatement service. Chief Cox.
Thanks.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah, this is straightforward. This is to get a contractor to do the work on those properties where the property owner does not undertake it at a given date.
I make a motion to have the board, the Chief Cox, advertise for weed abatement services. Do I have a second?
Seconding.
Second. Any discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
yes,
Director McKimmy,
yes,
Director Cheryl,
yes,
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Moving on to item G, review, discuss, and approve an agreement with Alfano Technologies. Chief Cox.
Thank you. If you'll remember, you approved to send out a bid for security cameras for fire stations 40 and 44. We got 2 bids back. The lower of the 2 bids was actually the Conoco Minolta company that we use for our copier services. However, they did not complete the bid to include installation. So installation once included was more than Alfano Technologies. The proposal in front of you is for security cameras on the perimeter of the 2 facilities, as well as the apparatus base.
I make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022-10, a resolution of the Coastside Fire Protection District Board of Directors awarding contract for security cameras purchase and installation systems on buildings 40 and 44 to Alfano Technologies Incorporated. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Bruce?
I question the idea of putting cameras on Station 44 that we're probably going to tear down here shortly, unless we can reuse the cameras and all the equipment.
Chief Cox?
Yeah, I hear that. It's worth asking for that potential when we get to the kind of scoping phase on the design build at 44. I think on the kind of the payoff side, we're looking at a $10,000 ask. We've already had vehicles broken into at station 40. I would just hate to not give our crew and the district what they need. There's been stations in Northern California where they've had burglaries during while they've been on calls and stolen equipment. I would kick myself if we came back and had something happen at 44 and had the opportunity to actually capture it.
Well, I guess excuse me, go ahead, Cynthia.
Is there a chance that the cameras at 44 could help protect construction materials and staging as you go through the renovation process?
Yeah, potentially. When we get to that phase, we're going to probably have to move completely off site and basically have nothing there. So I don't know that there'll be much use for it, but obviously, we're going to do it as best as we can or as much as we can.
Steve?
Also, I'm always pleased when we put something to bid and we have a local business to be able to bid on it or to be able to obtain the bid. And I think to the questions that Bruce is bringing up, also having a local known vendor, might have some more flexibility in understanding Bruce's concerns, and then the ability to reuse that equipment with the knowledge of our coastal climate of, how those cameras will last in a location like that. So all that's very much a positive to me.
Chief, perhaps you might, just on the side, inquire from the vendor if it is possible to reuse it, and if so, to make any arrangements to make sure that we do save whatever we can. But the other comment I would make is that, we've been some time, years, trying to get something done on Station 44, and certainly we're many months, if not years, away from actually doing some building. So it'd probably be a good use of the cameras in the interim. However, with that, I'm going to make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-10. Did I make it before? I forget.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Jean.
Director Cockrell,
Yes.
Director McKimmy,
Yes.
Director Sherrill,
Yes.
Director Stockman,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. Moving on to the Board of Directors and Chiefs report. The Finance Committee did not have a meeting this month, but in the packet and available for the public is the detailed finances of the district year to date through February. A reading of this document to me shows that everything is in order with nothing, no standout exceptions. Total revenue year to date is 60%. And looks like we certainly will exceed our revenue target for the year. Total expenses of 30%. That's misleading because of the way CAL FIRE bills us, and also for the fact that in our current budget, we have projected putting some money into our LAIF account. So it's a little deceiving, the 30%. But nevertheless, our expenses are under control and no problems there. The other thing I'd point out, which I hadn't noticed until this notice, is that our ERAF reimbursement was $1.6 million. We had budgeted for $1.2 million. So it was up some $400,000 over our budget. And at least in my tenure, that's by far the largest refund, if you will, that we've received from ERAF, and certainly is due to the fact that the state at the very moment is very well off financially. That's my financial committee report. JB, do you have any questions?
No, that's excellent. I was noticing the same things you brought up. Thank you.
Any other financial observations or questions? Moving on, volunteer committee report, JB.
No report.
Land and structures, Director McKinney, Director Cockrell.
I would just ask Jonathan, have you heard anything from the architect?
Yeah, so that's a good point. The folks, so just for everyone's point of reference, we've had 2 meetings with SVA, the architect doing the feasibility study. They sent a draft program based on the conversations that we've had and the site visits that they've done. I had a follow-up with them just on some of the details of stuff that we wanted clarity on. I expect a draft program back from them, just the space needed next month for the board.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question while we're on this point, and it's more of an observation and maybe some forward thinking for the board. As the community knows and the board knows, El Granada is the residence I live in, which is irrelevant because all of us drive by that station that I think we're all very proud of. And there's still that little triangle piece of property that we've placed the new fire notification sign on. And it seems, even watching the landscapers, they kind of mow up to part of that. And I discussed prior to the construction of the station and then during the station, is there's some way we could, as a board, maybe in partnership, improve that little triangle of property. I think it could be with minimal cost. You know, it might include just a bench with some ground surface that doesn't need a continuing maintenance of mowing. It might have a path that goes through there. It's a very, that whole corner, that whole area south of the station is very much used by community and visitors. So I just want to plant the seed to all the board members that maybe we can think of a way to improve that piece of property. There would be a benefit not only for less maintenance, but better use to the entire community.
Yeah, it does, Steve. And my design of property is 0, but it does seem awkward. It just seems like a piece of land that should be used for something a little bit more attractive, given in its prominent location. But your point's well taken. Let's see if we can come up with something and be open to whatever ideas any of the board members or any of the public has on how we might better use that property.
Excellent.
Very good.
And I just had a comment concerning Station 41. At some point, I think we ought to consider maybe some sort of a grand opening. I know it's been quite a long time, but COVID really hasn't cooperated with us, but it's, I think it's something the district can be proud of, and we should show it off.
Yes.
Amen. I'm not sure when I'm not up to date on all the particular restrictions from the county or CAL FIRE has in terms of meetings or anything like that. But Chief Armstrong and Chief Cox, if we could decide what is appropriate and what is a good timing from your position, I think that would be a good move. I think the public would enjoy that. Okay, very good. Moving on. Vegetation Management Committee, Director Stockman.
Yes. I just want to do a kind of a brief update to the entire board and to the community of this process that both the Vegetation Committee and staff has been participating in. And that's the fire resiliency scoping project for El Granada. We attended a meeting yesterday that involved both Director Cheryl, myself, and Chief Cox. There were some updates. So we're getting near the end of their information gathering. Some of it was some fire modeling behavior that wasn't complete. I'm not going to go into that part of it. The other part of yesterday's meeting was a suite of actions that the contractor, the Panorama, suggested. In other words, what's the action items? And I think we've both, Cynthia and I, have expressed our concern about from the beginning of like, what's going to be the final results of this? And we did, I think, staff as well as the Vegetation Committee has expressed that what we didn't want to happen we didn't want actions being dictated to agencies from this report. And with that was broken down into the suite of actions yesterday was what, and I'll read them off, was vegetation treatments was 1, 2 was structure protection, 3 was fire preparedness, 4 was critical access public infrastructure, 5 was fire safety education, and final 6 was service and procurement. So all of those didn't provide a great deal of detail. I think the Vegetation Committee expected there to be from the contractor the suggestions of what those items were from their interviews with the community and the other agencies. Those were lacking. I don't want to be critical, but it was to the point where they were asking those participating what things we think needed to be added. My expectation was that the process would determine that, and we would have a discussion of that. So all the purpose of this is to inform the board as it goes forward, because it's going to affect the final product. And my personal concerns have not changed from my earlier concerns. Especially the one that goes to the service and procurement at the end. And that was talking about people and equipment, possible staff positions, infrastructure upgrades. All those have the sound of somebody's going to be responsible for those added needs. So I think I'll end there, and I hope that gives the rest of the board just an understanding of where we're at in the process, and maybe what we'll build on in our final conclusions and the report of the entire process. And I will, again, we keep praising staff, but I think each month it's important to do that for the simple reason that the majority of the information that this report is using is coming from CAL FIRE. So they're gathering information, but most of the information was information that already exists or continues to be put out through the state, through CAL FIRE, and also through the Coastside Fire District. So I just, again, want to praise the amount of man hours that the staff is putting in to meet the community's needs in this process, and hopefully will deliver the best product at the end. And I'll open up to either Cynthia or Chief Cox on if they want to add anything.
Let's hear from Cynthia first,
Yeah.
and then perhaps Chief Cox. Cynthia?
Yes, please.
Cynthia?
I would echo what Director Stockman is saying. It wasn't a report that moved us ahead in our thinking about the issues of concern to the residents of El Granada as we understand them. It was a restatement of what had been heard, and we got a format for how the action scenarios would be presented, but no content really about how they would be filled out. So this whole effort is supposed to be concluded in April. And this last meeting seemed to be more a prelude to what the next phase would be on a project that, this was going to be a self-contained scoping process. So I thought that the questions that Chief Cox posed to their fire modeling expert were outstanding. Chief Cox, do you want to talk about your thoughts after you saw their models?
Yeah, I think, not to go too much into detail, but one of the biggest challenges in any fire model is to actually model things that are not vegetation. So it's fairly trivial to model based on LiDAR and find fuels, because you can capture that information and quantify it and qualify it. What you can't do that with is structures, and structure ignition and structure spread and ember cast from structures in campfire has a really big impact on how a fire behaves. So if you don't incorporate that into your model, you run the risk of not actually having a model that is representative of what the actual fire will do. So I think that was a big topic of conversation today, and we'll have some follow-up with RCD. Just to kind of summarize it, I spent some time today just reviewing the RFP for the project as well as the proposal that their consultant put forward. And I think my feedback from CAL FIRE in general is really going to focus on just outside of the scope we're in right now, outside of the scope of what was really trying to be accomplished. And I say that because I don't have unlimited staff time. My staff doesn't have unlimited staff time. And to go from vegetation treatment projects to 6 categories seems like a pretty big ask from our agency.
Well, let me give my thoughts on this very briefly, not going too far. First of all, I think the 3 of you in your comments have been very kind and polite. And from what I'm reading between the lines is that this is not the kind of a document that is going to be, you know, a very helpful, well thought out, professional presentation. I hope I'm wrong in the final product. I compliment the 3 of you for adding value to whatever is and direction to the consultant to get something that's meaningful to us. But I remind you that this is not, whatever it is not obligating us to do anything. But I do think if it's not well done, it could add a great deal of confusion to vegetation management program and what people expect. So I hope the final product is something that the 3 of you and this board can adopt enthusiastically, but I'll keep my fingers crossed. But thank you for the report. And by the way, did I understand that is going to be completed in April? Is that the timeline?
That is the timeline.
Okay. Anything else? Any further questions on this subject?
My only question would be, who is going to write that report? Are we going to write it, or is it going to be written and given to us?
No.
It's going to
Okay.
be written by Panorama, who is RCD's lead consultant on the
Okay.
project.
And so then they will present it to us along with the public. Is that correct?
They'll distribute it, I'm sure, widely to all the public, I assume.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, if there's no more. Bruce, did you have a question? No? Okay. Moving on, Special District Association, no report. ALS-JPA, no report. FDAC liaison report, no report. I mentioned last month that they're having a conference, but that I don't have the update on that. Emergency Preparedness Liaison, Director Cheryl.
I spoke to Director Cheryl and agreed that I would do the report for the KEEP meeting this month, just because we thought we'd spend more time on the redistricting issue. So we'll share that, but I'll kind of go through the notes, and there's one event that is that all right with you, Cynthia?
Go right
Continue
ahead. I just have a couple notes after you're finished.
Yeah, okay. The guests, so we both attended the KEEP meeting of this month that it happened on March 4th. There was a guest speaker, and it was the CARES presentation. I don't know if the board has followed it in the media, the local media, but it's, I'm going to briefly explain it. It's in summary, the CARES group is a group that tries to assist law enforcement through our dispatch system, that if there's mental health issues, and to prevent the history of escalation sometimes when law enforcement arrives on the scene, it allows for the CARES group, which is under El Centro de Libertad. It's a partnership that it basically was born within the city of Half Moon Bay, did the reach out on it. They set a certain amount of funding aside. It's been co-financed by the county with additional monies. I've read in the local paper today, there were some additional fundings coming from grant to support it. So I think I've described the purpose of it. It's very well staffed. It's been proven in other communities. Where the city reached out to was the city of Eugene in Oregon that already had this group established and put in place. So there's a little bit of measurement to it. We could talk about the funding. There's some personal points I'm going to make to it after hearing the presentation, and then also both Director Cheryl and I were at the ribbon cutting ceremony that was 2 weeks ago, I believe, or last week. And you'll see the location in Shoreline Station facing the highway next to the temporary library that was located there. That's the location of their new facility. Also within that, they have a mix of two professionals that respond to these calls. They're not calls that are an EMS of nature, or that has that there's not a risk to for the care group to respond. In other words, it's predetermined that it's safe for them to respond to that. So and it was built on, and again, you can help me with the end of this, Cynthia, of your views on it. But it was born of incidents that have happened on the coast that they felt might have gone a different direction if something like this was in place. And so one personal opinion I have is often on new programs like this, there's concerns about the cost, but I always go back and I'm explaining this to the community and then also to the board. So say it costs $200,000 a year to do it, which is less than that now. If it affects one life and it saves one life, that intervention, and not only that, but it brings a greater trust to the community. I think that has that value goes beyond the dollar value. And then also from being a first responder myself in the past, I think it's a great asset. I think it's a great complement, especially to what the fire service does. So I think there's that element of it that's a success. So those are the 2 points. I think it was a good representation also, as well as both Director Cheryl and I attending that ribbon cutting. Engine 40 was there, as well as Chief Cosgrave. I think it was a good showing from the fire district to support the concept of this and the trust that it'll build within the community, and that the district's participation in it. I was very pleased to see that. Any questions on that point specific before I go into the rest of the minutes?
Director Cheryl, did you have anything to add on?
Well, of course, Director Stockman presented the full thing. The innovation here is that if you call 911 and you report a mental health emergency and there is not a weapon involved, then this van is sent out. It's a simple white van. It says CARES. Everyone on it is bi or trilingual. There is a variety of skill sets represented, from clinical to EMT to a number of other different things. It comes to your house. It sits there. Instead of having a fire truck idling outside or a police car right in front of your house, or several, it's one white van. And the people go in and they take care of things and they leave. And then they follow up the next day. So it starts a continuum of service to whatever the event was that caused the initial call. And the hope is, of course, that de-escalates mental health issues as opposed to putting them in a defensive and weaponized situation. So it's a very innovative program and a lot of liability involved. And I applaud this community for taken the risk and making this happen.
Very good.
Well said. Thank you, Cynthia. Well said.
Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, some of the organizations that report, that's the value of this key community that continues to be strengthened and informative to community. I'm going to go over some of the agency reports. Don Matei from our OEM department, or OES, talked about this tsunami notification exercise. That would have happened today. I was out of town, so I didn't hear it, but hopefully it went well. They talked about the large animal evac group have an upcoming drill. They're trying to get some crossover. They're trying to get their group trained with as in ham radio operation. All of that increases the crossover of communication between the entire community. We talked from Susie Castoria about from the supervisor's office, the 18th annual San Mateo County Disaster Preparedness Day is going to be held on July 30th at the San Mateo County Event Center. Todd Blair from HSA, Human Services Agency, is a request for a proposal for mass care and shelter expanded on the coast side. That's a very important issue. I think you'll see more of that moving forward. They're trying to find, we're trying to strengthen, which we all recognize as a key element, is that there's shelters on the coast side during disasters. And not only are there shelters, but there's people that are trained and available to open those centers. So I think it's encouraging to see the county health, the county HSA work with this community to try to move that forward. I think it's been stalled for a great deal of time. I think there's been a perception that Red Cross is responsible and capable completely of doing that. And I think it's another indication that, there's good intentions with things, but things have to be well thought out and well planned to actually, and there has to be personnel and funding to make it happen. So I think that's something that we'll be reporting back to you in greater detail later. And then the South County area, which is always important, even though it's outside of the district, it's on our border and it's our neighbors, and and it does affect because we are one entire community. The update from them, from Pat O'Coffey, was that the Station 57 remodel is still a little bit stalled. I think they're waiting for final permits.
They got it. They
got their final. Oh,
Finally.
great.
From the
Good.
county.
Yeah, so I think the funding's there, the permits are done. You'll see that that station start to move forward. Continue to certify, we continue to build the CERT membership in those branches 3 and 4. They're also there was point that we're coming into our Coastside Gives this year, and that they brought that example of that. The La Honda Fire Brigade and the Amateur Radio Club will participate in that again. That's a great funding source for all these nonprofit groups. And then Julie Barr updated the MRC, which remembers is the Medical Reserve Corps. That is getting closer and closer. I know we say that each time, and it's just a general update to you, but that's going to be when that actually happens, it's going to have a very strong impact on this entire community, and again in our sense of safety and preparedness. And with that, I will pass it to Cynthia if she wants to add any more to any of those points.
That was pretty thorough, but I just have one more thing.
Yes.
Two more things. The next variant, we just finished a training, and that's the CERT update. So we have been listening very carefully to what is the COVID Omicron next update, because our training event involved about 60 people. So we have been listening carefully to the health reports, and BA2 seems to be the next thing on the horizon. The way that Palo Alto wastewater is now indicating that it is present there. The wastewater, interestingly enough, is becoming the canary in the coal mine in terms of what is the next variant, for a number of reasons. First of all, it seems to be coming The information appears to be available about 4 to 10 days before cases are reported to doctors. So it's kind of an early warning system. And the tests that exist these days allow the wastewater treatment personnel to test with kits, and the lab comes back with what variant it is. And so we checked in with our wastewater treatment people at SAM. They were very responsive. They've just signed a contract with Stanford Laboratories in Palo Alto, and they expect their testing kits to arrive shortly. And they will begin testing here on the Coastside through SAM. And they haven't decided how they're going to report those results, but at least that is a resource that is coming towards us. Dr. Fauci is saying the early information on BA.2 is that it's even more contagious than Omicron, but it doesn't seem to be any more serious, and it does seem to serious disease and hospitalizations seem to be kept at bay by vaccinations and boosters. So that's the news now. We're looking ahead to our training programs. We're thinking about the firefighters that are going out to be the people who are responding to people who are going to not feel well and not know what they have. So it's another round, another variant. And I think we're just going to keep having these.
Yes,
It's
yeah,
a matter of, dealing with them in our everyday lives.
very good.
That's it for me.
Thank you.
Sir,
Oh,
Thank
sir,
you.
right. That is me. We just graduated 29 new certs. We're so proud. It was an arduous process. Chief Cosgrave is away at a conference this week, but when you see him, please tell him thank you. He taught so many classes, and he did such a brilliant job. And the students came back this time and said the teaching was even stronger than before. So they have welcomed back the in-person classes, and I'm afraid Chief Cosgrave is going to be stuck teaching for the rest of his life because he's really good at it. He's committed. So that was 5 of those people were not from here. 5 of the 29. One was from Pacifica because we're helping them restart their program. They haven't actually gotten going again since COVID. 2 of them were from White House Canyon, which burned during the CZU fires. They lost their homes. One, and then we had one who came all the way from Santa Cruz Aptos, came to the in-person sessions 4 times, and another one who was out of Branch 3, who was there. So we're working very hard to be good citizens and be certain that we are training key individuals from programs around us so that they can go back and reactivate their own programs.
very good.
And in terms of volunteer firefighters, JB, we came up with a plan. We need more trainers who have medical backgrounds in our training programs. And so we offered to the volunteer firefighters, if you would consider, we'll identify people who are non-medical professionals who could be trained to teach medical aspects of CERT in exchange for getting them into Coastside Gives this next year, so that the volunteer firefighters here on the Coastside, because they're already a 501c3, could have the benefit of community fundraising, and we know that people will respond to them. So I'm going to mentor them through that process, starting at your meeting in April.
Okay, good. Glad to
Yeah.
hear it.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
it's a good exchange.
I'd be very happy to introduce you.
Just one thing I would ask all my fellow board members, that maybe we could start having a bigger presence, at least one of us, if not more than a couple, where I think, let me get to the point, for their graduations, that there's some presence of the board for their graduation processes, I think would be of value to show our support and just encouragement for these groups of 25 that CERT and Cynthia and Chief Cosgrave keep building. So I'm willing to do that. Maybe we can work out some, if we can get more on the calendar, Cynthia, of when they're coming up and when our presence would be helpful. I would like to do that.
Thank you. Get your calendar out. It's November 13th.
Okay.
Our whole year is on the calendar, coastsidecert.com.
Great.
homepage. And
Thank
you.
let's see,
I
that-
would also volunteer to do that.
I
Go
really,
ahead, Cynthia. Go ahead.
so we're also doing a Listos class on Main Street at La Piazza on Saturday in person in Spanish. And we hope that it is a well-received big training program. This is part of our grant from the city of Half Moon Bay. Go into detail, but why do that? And we also have coming up on April 23rd, our next ACT, Advanced Cert Training, which is in disaster psychology. That's a morning session. Again, it's on the calendar. The person coming is the regional expert in disaster psychology, Nick Arnett. He's written 4 books on the subject, and it will be a very popular event. And once again, it would not be possible to us to host these free educational programs without the support of the Coastside Fire Protection District. Your facilities make all the difference. And of course, the staff who were there and supportive of us, we are endlessly grateful. So thank you.
Very good. That it, Cynthia?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Moving on, attorney's report.
Nothing, thank you very much.
Moving on to fire chief report. Chief Cox or Chief Armstrong? Who wants to go first? All right, Chief Cox, you're on.
I'll go first. On the COVID front, no staffing impacts currently. We still are doing twice weekly testing. On the management side, talked about the SVA architects. I've been in contact with UPI, the pension consultants that we signed a contract with. They should also be bringing back a proposal next month for some recommendations. I believe we'll route that to the finance committee first, if you like. With the board. On the personnel front, you should have seen an email today introducing the 3 new battalion chiefs that were hired. One of the chiefs is the battalion 10C position. 10C is the split funded spot between the district and county fire. Ryan West, awesome addition to the chiefs team. He worked, I think, almost 10 years over here on the coast. Is just, one of those guys who he's the guy you go to for everything you don't know the answer to. We're really lucky to have him. I think he's not only a good person, just has a great sentiment, a great way that he presents himself, and a lot of buy-in from the troops. On the paramedic side, as you probably know, with most agencies, fire agencies at the moment, we continue to struggle with the paramedic hiring. It's just a fact of the matter. We're doing our best to try to come up with some new ways to recruit and retain individuals. As far as operations, no major notable calls for service. Training this week, the company officer training class is going on. I believe it's all hazard incident command going on at the moment here at Station 40. On the facility side, you notice the new carpet is going in the front entryway and is looking good. The new sign is up. We're still doing some rearranging about what's going on the walls and how it's all going to look, but we're getting there. On the apparatus side, engine 44 is still out of service, mechanical, waiting for parts, and the new battalion chief vehicle is being outfitted. Hopefully we'll have that within the next 2 weeks. The final thing I wanted to do was just share, you may have seen in the newspaper last week, a piece about the Community Connect. Hibden has done a really good job of actually creating this system and working with them. If you can see my screen, on the website now is a tab called CFPD Community Connect. Clicking on that tab, individuals can now go in and provide information about their residence or business that's only accessible to fire crews when they're responding to an incident. And really what it does is you can do things as a member of the public, such as send me a text message anytime a fire engine gets dispatched to my home or business. So if you're on vacation, you could get a text that says the fire department's responding to a fire alarm at your house or your business. So it's 2 ways. The residents can get information and we can get information. Highly confidential, highly encrypted. And, we recommend putting basic information in there that you want the fire department to know. I think it's a really good step for the community to be engaged and connect with the fire department, and something that Chief Hibden has done a lot of work on. The third kind of piece of this is the engine crews also have the application. It's called First Due, and they can actually, while they're out and about, mark areas such as this is where the Knox box is, this is where the fire department connection is, and it populates all of that pre-planned information on all fire apparatus so that they know when they're coming in, whether they're from here or not. So I just wanted to share that. I'm pretty pretty excited for it, and hats off to Chief Hibden for really spearheading that. And with that, I'm happy to pass it over to Chief Armstrong.
Chief Armstrong?
Yeah, good evening, folks. It's funny, I'm looking at the screen now, and I promise it's not as dark as I look. I don't know what's going on there. I got like a night mode or something. But no, I just want to echo just one thing that Jonathan was talking about, and that's the battalion chief batch that we just hired. I know one of those positions, like he was talking about, Chief West, is going to work between both programs, you on the coast as well as the San Mateo County Fire Program. But we also did get those other two battalion chiefs that are primarily San Mateo County. And you guys know how often we share on both sides of the hill, and we're really excited. We got a really, really great batch of battalion chiefs out of this, folks that have been in the programs in the county for some time, have a lot of investment. So we're really excited about some of the moves that we're making on the personnel side, and we'll continue to try to work on those paramedic kind of recruitment issues. We're starting to try to get a little bit outside of the box and try to stay ahead of what the department can do. Just want to mention, I got to be present for the redistricting meeting a couple of weeks ago. It was really nice to see Directors McKimmey and Cheryl in person, as well as Director Burke just in passing, because he couldn't be there for obviously the full meeting. But it was impressive to see the thought and just general, very deep dive by the directors into that redistricting process. You have these computer models that did all this, but it just can't beat that local factor, and the thought that you guys put into making sure neighborhoods stayed together and people were where they identify and everything was awesome to see. So I hope it ends up being a really great product, and it'll be nice to see, I think in May, getting everybody back together. So it'd be great to see everybody in person. So thank you guys as always for all the support of the department. Appreciate it, and nice seeing y'all.
Thank you.
Good to see you too.
Thank you, Chief. Other comments? I have just a couple of quick items here just to call your attention. I know you've seen in your packet, and the public may like to see the monthly report for PAS. And as you saw for the month of February, there was a loss of $70,000. But the fund itself is extremely healthy. It's still got $4.2 million in it. Great job being done by the PAS people. The statistics on the various activities within the district is also available in your packet and available to the public, and ask you to take a look at that at your leisure. And a very nice letter from Jean Zozzi regarding a response from one of the crews at one of her illnesses. The other point I'd like to make is that, and I don't know who gets these notices, but I think that all the board members received the list of certifications that we are required to have as part of a public board. And you can take them online, which is about the most boring thing I can imagine, but it's available. But also, I would call to your attention, there is their annual conference of the Coastside Special District Association is in August, beginning on August, I believe it is 23rd. And at that particular meeting, they will cover the 3 required courses that we as board members have to take, and that is on ethics, harassment, and governance. It is in Palm Springs, which will probably be 110 But nevertheless, I would encourage the board members, if you're available, to attend, or whatever you need to do to bring up your required certifications, do them, please. But you can do it at the conference in August in Palm Springs. And as soon as they didn't have the details on the conference, but as soon as I receive it, and again, I don't know who else receives that, but we'll publish it to all the board members. The last thing I'd like to say is that redistricting throughout California, certainly in Northern California, has been in some cases, some locations, very controversial, heated discussions, various kinds of community groups getting together, citizens groups getting together, and all that type of thing. And clearly, we were not subject to any of those kind of activities at all for a number of reasons. But I would give the most thanks to Cynthia and Bruce for their work on the ad hoc committee. Just did a marvelous job, Cal, and for Chief Cox, and also for your effort. I think out of all this whole process has been going on now for whatever has been 3-4 months or longer. We've actually had 2 citizens even voice anything, and those were not complaints regarding our process to get to where we are today. So Cynthia, Bruce, Chief Cox, thank you all very much. Without any other comments, without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.
May I ask one quick question?
Whoop, sure.
Yeah. For our form, I don't remember the number that Michelle keeps asking me for our conflict of interest as elected officials.
Or 700.
Yeah.
Turn mine in today.
Would anybody off the record send me any way that the easiest way to do that without printing the entire thing? My past years, I've had to print all like 30 pages to get that one page that just says I have nothing to declare.